Imagine a small, quiet town where kids go to school feeling safe, their backpacks bouncing as they laugh with friends. Until one day, a scream shatters that peace. Picture a 13-year-old girl, full of life, found lifeless in a school bathroom, her throat slit, her future stolen in the most brutal way. Now, imagine a man accused of her murder, locked away for years, while whispers of doubt grow louder. Did they get the wrong person? Welcome to Global Shadows, where we uncover the darkest crimes against the innocent. Today, we're diving into the Tair Rada murder case, a tragedy that shook Israel to its core and sparked a national debate about justice, truth, and the cost of a flawed system. On December 6, 2006, Tair Rada, a bright 8th grader, was found dead in a locked bathroom stall at her school in Katrin, a small town in the Golan Heights. Her murder was gruesome. Slashes to her neck, stab wounds across her body, and blows to her head that spoke of unimaginable violence. Roman Zdorov, a Ukrainian immigrant working as a floor at the school, was arrested and later convicted, sentenced to life in prison in 2010. But here's the twist. There was no forensic evidence tying him to the crime, and his confession was riddled with contradictions. For years, Tair's mother, Ilana, refused to accept a verdict, fighting tirelessly to uncover the truth. New evidence, public outcry, and a gripping documentary turned this case into a national obsession, leading to Zdorov's acquittal in 2023 after 16 years behind bars. Who really killed Tair Rada? And what does this case teach us about justice? Let's step into shadow of doubt in Katrin, Israel, and unravel a mystery that's haunted the nation for nearly 2 decades. Katrin, Israel, 2006, a sleepy town of about 8,000 people nestled in the Golan Heights, a region known for its rolling hills and peaceful vibe. It's the kind of place where kids walk to school without a second thought, where parents don't worry about locking doors. Tair Rada, a 13-year-old 8th grader at Nofi Gola High School, was one of those kids. She was a typical teenager, bright, curious, with a love for dance and a close circle of friends. On December 6, 2006, Tair started her day like any other, kissing her mom, Ilana, goodbye and heading to school with her backpack slung over her shoulder. She spent the morning in class, laughing with friends during breaks, and decided to skip her last period to hang out in the schoolyard. She had plans to go to dance class later that evening, a routine she loved. But as the afternoon turned to evening, Tair didn't come home. Ilana waited, her worry growing with each passing minute. Tair's backpack wasn't in its usual spot by the door, and her phone went unanswered. By 7 p.m., Ilana was in a panic, calling Tair's friends and driving to school. What she found would haunt her forever. Tair's body, discovered by a janitor in a locked bathroom stall on the 2nd floor. The scene was horrifying. Her throat had been slit, her body covered in stab wounds, her hands and chest marked by defensive wounds, as if she'd fought for her life. Blood pooled on the floor, staining the toilet seat and walls, a stark contrast to the innocence of a school bathroom. The news spread like wildfire, and Katrin was thrown into chaos. Parents pulled their kid from school, terrified of a killer on the loose. The media descended, broadcasting the tragedy across Israel, calling it a Twin Peaks story, a murder in broad daylight, in a place meant to be safe. The police were under immense pressure to find a killer, and every lead, no matter how small, had to be chased. But as the investigation began, the question loomed. Who could do this to a child and why? The answer, it seemed, would tear the nation apart. As Katrin reeled from Tair's murder, the police zeroed in on a suspect, Roman Zdorov, a 29-year-old Ukrainian immigrant who'd been working as a floor at Nofi Golan High School. Zdorov had moved to Israel in 2002 on a tourist visa, staying without citizenship status, a quiet man trying to build a life with his wife, Olga. He was known as a hard worker, often seen fixing tiles or patching walls around the school. But to the police, he was an outsider, someone who didn't quite fit in a tight-knit town like Katrin. Just 1 week after the murder, on December 13, 2006, Zdorov was arrested. The police had little to go on. No forensic evidence, no witnesses placing him at the scene, just a hunch and a tip about a suspicious gardener that led them to him. After 6 days of intense interrogation, Zdorov confessed. He told police he killed Tair after she mocked him for refusing to give her a cigarette, a flimsy motive for such a brutal crime. He even reenacted the murder for investigators, describing how he used a box cutter to slit her throat. The police held a press conference, proudly announcing they'd solved the case. But less than a day later, Zdorov recanted, claiming the confession was coerced. He said interrogators fed him details, pressured him, and even physically intimidated him. He lost 15 kilograms, 33 pounds, during the process, later alleging abuse by an officer named Yehiel Edry, an act that wasn't recorded as required by law. The confession itself was a mess. Zdorov said he used a smooth-bladed box cutter, but forensic experts later determined Tair's chin wounds came from a serrated knife. He claimed he threw away his bloody pants, but no such evidence was found, and bloody shoe prints in the stall didn't match his shoes, a fact dismissed by the courts despite testimony from experts like FBI veteran William Bodziak. Zdorov's wife, Olga, stood by him, telling the media, "My husband is innocent. The justice system doesn't want to admit they made a mistake." But in a town desperate for closure, Zdorov was an easy target, a poor immigrant with no voice. Was he a killer or a scapegoat for a system under pressure? In September 2010, nearly 4 years after Tair's murder, Roman Zdorov stood trial in the Nazareth District Court. The prosecution's case rested heavily on his confession. Despite its contradictions and his claims of coercion, they painted Zdorov as a cold-blooded killer, a man who snapped over a petty insult and slaughtered a child in a school bathroom. But the evidence, or lack of it, told a different story. There was no DNA linking Zdorov to Tair or the crime scene. The murder weapon, a serrated knife, was never found, contradicting Zdorov's claim of using a box cutter. Bloody shoe prints on Tair's jeans didn't match his shoes, a point raised by defense experts, but dismissed by the court. The prosecution leaned on Zdorov's reenactment and a second confession he made to an undercover informant in his cell, but even that was questionable. Details didn't match the crime scene, and Zdorov's lawyers argued the informant was planning to pressure him further. The trial was a media circus, with the public divided. Tair's father, Shmuel, believed Zdorov was guilty, desperate for closure after losing his daughter. But her mother, Ilana, had doubts from the start. She'd asked the police hard questions early on. Where's the forensic evidence? Why are there so many inconsistencies? The court, however, wasn't swayed by the gaps. On September 14, 2010, Zdorov was convicted of murder and obstruction of justice, sentenced to life in prison plus 2 years. He appealed twice, in 2013 and 2014, but the Supreme Court upheld the conviction in 2015 in a split 2-1 decision. Justice Yoram Danziger dissented, arguing there was reasonable doubt. Too many unanswered questions, too little evidence. But the majority ruled against Zdorov, and he was sent back to prison. Tair Rada, standing outside the courtroom, told reporters, "I still doubt he's a killer. I'll keep pursuing Tair's killers until my dying day." Her words echoed a growing sentiment in Israel. Something was wrong with this case. The lack of forensic proof, the questionable confession, and the rush to convict an immigrant with no clear motive left a bitter taste. Was this justice for Tair, or a rush to close a case that had terrified a nation? Zdorov's conviction didn't bring the closure Catherine, or Israel, hoped for. Instead, it sparked a firestorm of doubt that grew louder with each passing year. In 2016, a documentary series called Shadow of Truth aired on Israeli TV, later streaming on Netflix and captivating audiences worldwide. The 4-part series, with a 5th episode added in 2023, dissected the case with meticulous detail, exposing flaws in the investigation and trial. It revealed a bombshell. A man named Adir Habani claimed his ex-girlfriend, Ola Kravchenko, referred to as AK in reports, confessed him on the day of the murder, showing him a knife and bloody clothes. Habani passed 3 polygraph tests, but the police dismissed his story as baseless, and the Supreme Court rejected it, suggesting he was motivated to frame Ola. Ola, who suffered from schizophrenia, denied the confession, claiming Habani fabricated it after their breakup. But the documentary raised chilling details. Ola had a history of violent urges, once telling a psychiatrist she had a frog in her belly thirsty for human blood and had bought a knife to kill someone. The public was hooked. Shadow of Truth became one of Israel's most watched shows, turning the case into a national obsession. Social media exploded with theories. Some believed Ola was a real killer. Others pointed to local teens or even a cover-up by the school. Zdorov, often called Israel's Joseph K., became a symbol of institutional failure, a poor immigrant railroaded by a system eager to close the case. In 2018, new forensic evidence emerged. A hair on Tair's body didn't match Zdorov's DNA, but showed an inconclusive mitochondrial match to Bonnie, reigniting calls for a retrial. Activists rallied, launching petitions and protests, even gaining support from figures like Noam Chomsky and FBI whistleblower Colleen Rowley. Former Shin Bet deputy head Yitzhak Elon publicly stated in 2020 that the police fabricated evidence to convict Zdorov, comparing it to another wrongful conviction. Tair Rada, fueled by the documentary and new evidence, kept fighting, attending every hearing, speaking at Tair's memorial services, and vowing to find her daughter's killer. The nation was split. Some saw Zdorov as a monster, others as a victim of a broken system. Could the truth finally come to light? For 16 years, Roman Zdorov sat in prison, his life reduced to a cell, while the world outside debated his guilt. He maintained his innocence, supported by his wife, Olga, and a growing movement of activists. In 2019, his lawyer, Yerim Halavai, filed for a retrial, citing the new DNA evidence and Abani's testimony about Ola Kravchenko. The Supreme Court finally agreed, and in 2021, Zdorov was released to house arrest pending the retrial, a small taste of freedom after years of confinement. The retrial began in Nazareth, and over 10 months, 85 witnesses testified, their words dominating Israeli headlines. The courtroom was packed, with Tair Rada often sitting just behind Olga Zdorov. Two women united by loss but divided by their beliefs about the truth. On March 30th, 2023, the Nazareth District Court delivered its verdict. Zdorov was acquitted in a 2-1 decision. Judges Asher Kula and Danny Sarfati ruled that the confession was false, full of contradictions, and didn't match the crime scene evidence. They criticized the prosecution for failing to prove Zdorov's guilt beyond reasonable doubt, pointing to the lack of forensic evidence and the questionable interrogation tactics. Judge Kula noted, "Why would the accused choose to kill someone at his place of work, a crowded school, and leave so much evidence behind?" Zdorov, fighting back tears outside the courthouse, said simply, "The truth won. I want to go home to my children." His sister added, "We'll start a better life from here on." But the victory was bittersweet. Judge Kula turned to Ilana, saying, "We tried to solve the mystery, but it's possible Tair took her secret to the grave." Ilana, in tears, rejected that, vowing, "This isn't over. Tair didn't take her secret with her. She was viciously murdered, and I won't let it go." After 16 years, Zdorov was free, but Tair's killer was still out there. Roman Zdorov returned to Katrin a free man, reuniting with his family after 16 years of unimaginable hardship. He spoke of wanting a quiet life, focusing on his children, and healing from the trauma of prison. But the Tair Rada case remains open, a wound that won't heal for her family or the nation. Ola Kravchenko was never charged, despite the DNA evidence and Abani's testimony, and other theories, like a group of Nofi Golan students being involved, have never been proven. A July 2022 mitochondrial DNA test of the hair found on Tair was inconclusive, matching Abani among thousands of others. But the court found no serious case against Ola either. As of April 2025, the investigation continues, with Tair Rada still attending memorials, still demanding answers, still holding on to hope that Tair's killer will be found. This case shook Israel not just because of its brutality, but because it exposed deep flaws in the justice system. Zdorov's conviction relied on a questionable confession, ignored forensic discrepancies, and targeted a vulnerable immigrant, echoing the systemic failures we've seen in cases like the West Memphis 3. It's a reminder that justice isn't always blind, and the innocent can suffer when fear and bias take over. Tair Rada's story is a heartbreaking reminder of how fragile our children's safety can be, and how justice can fail when we rush to judge. In 2006, 13-year-old Tair was murdered in her school bathroom in Katrin, Israel, and Roman Zdorov, a school handyman, spent 16 years in prison for a crime he likely didn't commit, convicted on a shaky confession and flawed evidence. At Global Shadows, we're here to honor Tair and fight for a safer, fairer world for all kids. Let's talk about how you can protect your children and advocate for justice in their name. First, make sure your child's school is a safe space. Tair was killed in a bathroom during a break, a place she should have been protected. Talk to your kids about staying in groups, especially in less supervised areas like bathrooms or playgrounds, and teach them to report anything suspicious, like an adult hanging around where they shouldn't be. Meet with school staff to ensure they have security measures, like locked doors or monitor hallways, and push for better safety protocols if they don't. Next, teach your children to trust their instincts. Tair's school had an uneasy atmosphere that day, with reports of outsiders nearby, but no one acted in time. Encourage your kids to tell you or a teacher if they feel scared or notice something strange, and let them know their feelings matter. Finally, advocate for fair justice systems in your community. Zdorov's wrongful conviction stole 16 years of his life, and Tair's real killer may still be free because of a rushed investigation. Support reforms that prevent false confessions, like requiring video-recorded interrogations, and ensure police are trained to handle child murder cases with care, so no family endures what Tair's did. You can also raise awareness about wrongful convictions, helping others see how prejudice and panic can derail justice. Tair's case shows us that safety and fairness go hand in hand, and we must fight for both. Tair, your memory drives us to seek justice, and we'll never stop searching for truth. If you like this story, support us by subscribing, share, and tell us how you keep your kids safe at school.